can hear destiny calling, calling out my name. Need no shield. Now watch me feel. Failure is not
Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes to help your body move. There you go. There you go.
I choose to thrive. I will learn with force, never on my knees. I am not the same. I'm different. I am not the same. Yeah, I am not the same.
Everything hurts so bad. Like excruciating pain. The brain is physically in so much pain. The nerves from my back of my head, through my neck, through my back.
All right. Welcome to the Face of Malpractice. I am your host, Melissa. For those of you tuning in for the first time, this channel is dedicated to featuring interviews with fellow psych drug warriors. It's not just my story to tell. This platform is meant to create space for others to share their truths. On TikTok and my other Instagram page, I'll continue posting a mix of content, including videos about my journey through psych drugs, psych drug injury, and educational material. Be sure to follow me here on YouTube, as well as on TikTok and Instagram for a variety of updates and insights. But today, we will be interviewing Amanda, a registered nurse and antidepressant withdrawal advocate who runs the social media platform The Functional Nurse, to learn about her SSRI journey and where she is today. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I actually don't know much about your story, so I'm looking forward to hearing about it today. I think a really good place to kind of start is, why don't you share where you were in your life before you got on to antidepressants, and then how did you end up on them?
Okay, that's a great way to start, I think, because it was so long ago now. It's been like 7 years. It was in 2017. So I was a new grad nurse. I had just graduated college, got my BSN in Bachelor of Science in Nursing, was starting a career in a very stressful cardiac intensive care unit. I had no experience before that, so it was brand new. All that stuff was brand new to me. And then about a year and a half prior to that, my brother had passed away, like pretty much out of the blue. It was very random. He was disabled from a stroke he had several years prior. So he had been in and out of nursing homes, but his death was like very abrupt to our whole family. It was just a very big shock. And I didn't get to say goodbye or anything. That was the first time I had lost anybody in my life. I was 22, or no, when that happened, I was 20 years old. So right before my 21st birthday. I hadn't even lost a grandparent or anything yet. So lost my brother abruptly. And then that definitely, I think, triggered a lot of anxiety for me. But also something I'm learning now, years later, was I was on birth control and Accutane um, throughout college. And so I think those two things had a big part of my developing anxiety and getting worse. And then like my gut health, things like that. I was going out and partying. I was eating awful. Like my diet was terrible. A lot of factors that I feel like if somebody would have talked to me about those things, I could have tried other things before I started a medication. But fast forward to me being brand new in the ICU. I actually had a panic attack one day. It was in training still. I was in like my second week of being there. And it was a little bit like the nurses that eat their young kind of thing. When they were training me, like they wanted me to be strong, they wanted me to be successful, but it was very much like you have to basically not show emotion and just do your job. And they knew I was anxious. Like it was very obvious that I was an anxious person. You could see it, you can literally feel it from just looking at me. So they threw me into this room. It was an emergency. It was almost like a test to see like what I would do. And they were like, go and pull up this medication. The patient was like crashing, like not doing well. Doctors, everything in the room. everyone was talking at once. And they're like, pull up this medication. And it was the life-saving medication for the guy that was not doing well behind me. And so I remember I just lost all ability to hear. Like I could not hear anyone behind me. I was shaking. My mouth got super dry. It was definitely, now I know it was a panic attack, but at the time I had no idea. I was like, what was that?
Mm.
To the point where the person who was educating me brought me in a room and said, what happened in there? Like they knew that something happened to me. Like that's how obvious it was. And I went home and I was a mess. Like I was bawling my eyes out. I remember texting friends that I had. And that I talk about this a lot is people go and get what they hear from their friends works for their friends. So my friend was like, "Oh, I'm on this and this. It's been so helpful for my anxiety." So then I'm like, "Oh, that'll probably work for me too." And I'm a nurse. I knew nothing about what any of these medications could cause. I think they tell you, my doctor, but I went into my primary care physician, and she said the only thing I might notice when I come off, try and come off one day, are a little bit of brain zaps. That's all she said. And because I went like that next day, I was like, I need to get put on something, or I'm not going to have a job anymore. Like, I didn't care about anything. I was just like, I need to my part at this job, and I need to be strong. I need to not have anxiety. I need to never have a panic attack again. So I ended up on 10 milligrams of Lexapro, and I became a travel nurse down the line. So I was going all over the country. I never had like a follow-up visit, which is partially my fault, but like the doctors never asked me to come in and how are you doing on this? Um, but yeah, that's how I ended up on one.
Wow. No, that's unremarkable. And I'm very sorry about your brother. So I just want to highlight that.
Thank you.
It's I also lost a brother, so I understand like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You get it, right? You get
Yeah.
you get it. So I am very sorry about that. And then it's interesting. Do you think that if the nurses that took you in were more graceful with your onboarding, that this could have ended differently for you?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Or if I saw a video, like the videos I make or the videos you make, if I saw anything
Mm.
about the risks of what this could do to you, or like not only just getting off, but the side effects in general, I feel like I didn't get proper informed consent. But if you're looking at the whole situation, yes. But at the same time, I feel like I still would have had that anxiety, even if
Yeah.
they acted differently. But I feel like that is what made me need to do it now. Like I felt like it's either I fix this issue or I'm
Yeah.
not going to have a job, because that's what it felt like. I felt like I was being punished.
Wow. Well, I'm so sorry that you went through all of that. It's interesting. I feel like as we transition from university or college into like the corporate world or to wherever our professional job is, I think anxiety is quite normal, right? We're these youngins getting thrown in with these adults that do this all day, that, they run laps around us. And it's almost like we're expected to be just like them right as we walk in. And I think there's a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety there. I always just like to go back to the root. And obviously there's a lot more roots before that led you to that moment in time, but it's quite interesting. um so now that was you went on the drug in 2017, and what when was the first time you started having any side effects? Did you have side effects while taking as prescribed?
So it was so difficult. And now even looking back, I'm like, I don't know if I had side effects when I first started, because I also was starting night shift. So I was having a lot of nausea, but I continued to think I like contributed it to oh, I'm starting night shift. Which can definitely cause nausea if you're changing your circadian rhythm. So I
Yeah.
was literally taking Dramamine to try to help with the nausea all the time. And then I was also fatigued all the time, but I'm like, was that because I was on night shift? I always contributed my symptoms to night shift. Um, but I think there, like in the beginning, really no. Like I say this all the time, I wish I had immediate side effects so I could have stopped. but I really didn't. I think my problems from the drug came after I was on it for like 3+ years. Like it was when I started getting to like the long term that I started noticing the things that it was doing to me.
It's really interesting. It's like, and this is with all psychiatric drugs. This is actually with all drugs. And I mean, you could probably speak to this, obviously, being as a nurse as well. These drugs, they can just turn on you. Like you could be on it and be fine. You could be completely
Hmm.
fine and be years in, and then it turns. And I think that's that is so much harder. And I'm someone that went on the drug, had immediate impacts, and was convinced that it was me, right? Like I am that case that had immediate impacts, psychosis, heart failure, POTS, like insane.
Oh
And they
my
were like
gosh.
because I had a brain injury before that, months before that, and they convinced me it was me. Anyway, my point is when someone is on it long like that, it's like, how do you associate the side effects to your psych drug, this little pill that you've been taking every day that you've been told it's completely safe? That must have been difficult.
Exactly. And I did not notice it until I started tapering off and the things that I was experiencing started to go away. So it was like, it
Wow.
had to have been the drug. It had to have been.
So why don't you speak about what were those symptoms? What were the symptoms you were experiencing?
It's it's so like such kind of off the wall things that you would never put together, that it was this. And it's very easy to kind of blame yourself and you're like, oh, is this just how I am? Like this might just be how I am. Um, Mine was mental and physical. I was experiencing these things at the same time. So like physical, started having gut problems. I started having exercise intolerance. I was somebody who
Hmm.
weightlifted every single day. I can't do that anymore because I'm injured from this medication. But at the time, I was weightlifting every day. I was very athletic. I hiked all the time. And then I started going on hikes and doing weightlifting, and I would get like short of breath and my heart rate would start racing. And I was like, what is happening? Like maybe I'm just out of shape. I don't know. Um, and then my my gut health started taking a turn. I would get bloated all the time, no matter what I ate. I'm like, what is happening? Started developing skin conditions. What is it called? The little skin tags. I started getting skin tags everywhere,
Yeah.
and then I started getting warts. Like, and I had never got like I feel like usually when you get warts, they start as a kid, and you sometimes get them on your fingers, but mine were like under my nails. They were all over my fingers. It spread to my leg. I had this one that I went to a dermatologist to get removed, and when they tried to remove it, it grew back like 5 times the size. And I was like, what is happening? Like my body, I had this once all this kind of came together, I was like, my body is trying to tell me something. Like, oh,
Hmm.
that's another thing. My gums were receding, they were bleeding all the time. I
Ah.
got bruises very easily all over my body. Um, and then we'll get into the mental. I was, and I could literally start crying talking about this because I like was the person that was so negative in any situation. Like I would go out with my friends, I would pick out every single bad thing that could be said and I would say it. And no one wants to be around somebody who's like that. And I was aggressive. I was going to work and it was at the point where people were starting to be like, are you okay? Because anything would set me off. Like, and I would just get so aggressive. I talk about this all the time. I'd get in my car. My car was like a trigger for me for some reason. I would just start screaming in my car. Like, even like I would get on the road and one person would pull out barely in front of me. They're not even doing anything wrong, but I interpreted it as like them attack. I don't even know. Like, there's no explanation for it. I was absolutely miserable. And then, not to mention, developed severe ADHD.
Hmm.
The fact that I'm talking to you and able to stay on topic right now is amazing because I could not do that when I was on my full dose of Lexapro. I actually ended up getting it was like kind of falsely diagnosed with ADHD because I really did have it because the drug impacted my dopamine so horribly. But it wasn't really me. Like it was the whatever the
Oh.
drug was doing. I could not stay motivated. I could not follow a task. I could not keep a conversation. I would literally be talking to my friend like at lunch, and I would just start looking up at the ceiling. I would like space out. And then lastly was the cognitive problems. I started losing my memory. I couldn't find words that I was looking for. That really started to scare me because I have Alzheimer's in my family and I was only like 27 years old at the time. So all these things together, I really was like desperate, but I still at that point had no idea it was the med. I had no idea.
This is unbelievable. And thank you so much for sharing it because I think this is so helpful for listeners because it's like, it's so relatable. Like a lot of
Yeah.
things you experienced, I experienced on the drugs, going through withdrawal, like all of these things. It's so quite interesting. It's like like we get put on this drug, it's a promise for a cure, and then it compromises our immune system and we start developing all of these things. Like I have, I don't even remember getting the flu or nearly any virus before psych drugs. After psych drugs, I think I've gotten every virus under the sun that I could possibly contract. And it's like it compromises our immune system. So
Yes.
I'm just glad that you're sharing all of this because I think it's super relatable and I think people can find themselves in parts of your journey here. So then I guess this brings us to the next big question, right? So how did you figure out it was the drug and why and when did you determine to come off of this drug?
So I literally like again about to start crying. Like I feel like I was never a religious person until this happened, but I seriously think it was like
Hmm.
a message from God. Like I have no idea, but I so my friend had told me about Dr. Daniel Amen when I was having all these problems. Like check out Dr. Daniel Amen. And I was like, okay, so I followed him on Instagram. Um, and then a little bit after that, I was in Florida at the time because that's where I lived, but I travel nursed to Washington State and California. So I went to Washington first, and Dr. Daniel Amen has a clinic, Amen Clinics in can't remember, it's outside of Seattle. I literally drove 3 hours from where my assignment was at the tip of Washington all the way through the state to the other side of the state to go to this clinic because I wanted this brain scan because that is how much I knew that something was wrong with my brain. And I think I talk about this all the time to people. I'm like, you need to listen to your own intuition. Like, you know your body. You know when something is wrong and you know when something is happening that is not you. And I kept reading about his SPECT scans. There's a lot of controversy about them. So I'm not saying everyone should go get one, but it was a huge turning point in my story. And so I talk about it. I went and I got a scan or whatever. It had so much like there's like I have a picture on my TikTok and Instagram if anyone wants to look at it. But it looked like my brain was severely damaged just by the picture. But that's when they were like, this part is what contributes to your impulse control, your aggression, your whatever. Like they had
Oh,
all
wow.
these things, your ADHD, this is why you have this. And then they kept saying, this was the thing that really stuck in my head. They kept saying, they're like, this part of your brain is sleepy because of the Lexapro. This part of your brain right here is sleepy because of your Lexapro. And I'm like,
Sleepy.
sleepy. So could that be contributing? And then I kind of like, I ignored it the first time, but then fast forward a few months later, I went to California. I was in San Diego on another travel nurse assignment. And I I was still seeing a psychiatrist through Amen Clinics because they kind of referred me to one because of the ADHD that really showed on that screen that I had it. So in my mind, because people look at these TikTok videos, they're like, if you have this, this, and this, you have ADHD. I convinced myself, I was like, I have ADHD. I need medication. So I tried Adderall, I tried Vyvanse. They all made me worse. I was so, because I was already angry and aggressive. It made me even worse. And then I'm like, doc, these aren't working for me. And this is, by the way, the doctor that I still see to this day. And he's the one who keeps prescribing the liquid for me. And if it weren't for him, I don't know. I honestly have no idea what I would do. Um, did he know exactly about the tapering? No, I had to kind of tell him about that a little bit. He knew to taper, but not as slow as what I'm doing. So then I was like, let's just try coming off Lexapro. Like I just one day And I am forever, like, as miserable as this has made me in so many ways, I am so thankful that I decided to come off or start tapering, because almost every symptom I was going to that clinic for, because I was like, my body and brain is so messed up, they're pretty much all gone now. I mean, I have a bunch of other issues now because of withdrawal, but the other issues, like, I can actually think clearly. I like, thankfully, I haven't developed the adehonia or adonia. I don't know how to say that word. Sorry. I haven't developed that yet. Thank God, because I can feel joy now. And that's another thing that I realize now that I'm tapering, is I lost all ability to feel joy. I never could cry. So just feeling my emotions again has been amazing. And I'm so thankful that I decided to come off of this.
Wow, look at that. I mean, that talk about guidance. It feels like something divine, something
Yes.
universal. I mean, I'm all there for it. And sometimes that's what it takes to put you on your path. You know, obviously you're an advocate, you're speaking out. And that's
Yeah.
like, while you suffer behind doors, and it sounds like you're doing well in many ways and you still have a withdrawal symptoms, but
Yeah.
you now speak out, and imagine the amount of people that you get to help because of this journey. And it seems like the universe was guiding you to this
I
to
know,
keep
that's
you
what
to
I
heal.
say. Yes, and I'll share just a quick story also about that, because that goes with the universal sign. So right as I started my taper, I texted my little brother, he's actually a priest, and I said, Joe, I don't know. I feel like, because we were texting one day, we really don't talk often. But I was like, I feel like I have no purpose. I told him that. And he was like, really? Like, and so we got to talking, and he's like, what's your address in California? I'm going to send you something. And so he sends me my own Bible with my name inscripted in it, and said, read these passages for when you're feeling like you don't have purpose. Read these passages for when you're having anxiety, all these things. So I started reading them. And then I just find that very ironic how that happened right as I started my taper. And then I quickly realized I couldn't come off this med. Like, it's been 2 years, and now I'm like able to help people. So I just think that's amazing. And I had
Wait,
to put that in there too.
can I ask you, so wait, what age was this that you were questioning your purpose?
I'm
28,
30 now. I think I
27?
had just turned 28. Yes.
So look, I think I bring this up often because it always is 27, 28. It's look into something called Saturn return, or rite of passage, or dark night of the soul. I mean, that happens.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it happens from 28 typically to 30. It starts, and it can last X
Oh, we're
amount of
at
time.
29 too. So it's all,
It's all within. I'm just saying, it's just so funny because the amount of people, like, every time they all fall within that age. It happens twice in our life. God willing, the second time is not as brutal as this. Okay, hopefully the universe
I hope not.
is a friendlier, but the second time it happens is in the late 40s. So anyway, let's not look at that time, but
Oh,
it's going to be a lot better than this phase. But that's
a
so
book or something
interesting.
by then.
So, okay, so you're now, you figured out, you're going to start coming off these drugs. When you started tapering, what were, or through these last 2 years, because it sounds like you're doing this long tapering, which is phenomenal. And I think it is so great to have an example speaking out like, hey, this is how you taper. And in my case, it's 2 years. And I see many people, like, I should have easily been in your shoes tapering that long too. And I think it's really great. But could you share, what were the symptoms? Like, what were the withdrawal symptoms you experienced through those 2 years?
So my story is kind of odd, because I held at a certain dose for a whole year. So
Yeah.
the first time when I started in California and realized I have to get liquid, I have to look on this page, I have to get advice from a Facebook page because my doctor doesn't know everything. Um, that I feel like going from 10, because I started on 10 milligrams, going from 10 to 5, it was hard, but it was nothing compared to what I'm dealing with coming from 5 to 0. And Dr. Mark Horowitz talks about it all the time, as I'm sure you know, about once you get to those lower doses, it's so hard. But so the first few symptoms, I feel like it was like sweating constantly and headaches, irritability, and I was craving carbohydrates. Like, I remember, and I've never been someone who's like, I need to eat this now. Like
Yeah.
every day after my 12-hour shift, I would go to the same place and pick up a pizza on my way home. Like I vividly remember I had to have that pizza. Like it was, and I still sometimes get that, the carb cravings, chocolate craving, just like it's like I need to have it. It was way more than just a normal craving. Um, Things like that. But then once I started getting really like because I tried going from like 5 to 2.5, obviously that's not going to work. But at the time I thought I could. So I tried that, experienced the depersonalization, derealization, felt like nothing around me was real, super, super brain foggy to the point where I couldn't even do anything. But after dropping from, so back in this July, so after that, I held at 4 milligrams for a year. This last July, which is when I really started getting vocal about all of this, I tried going from 4 milligrams to 3.6, like literally tried to drop by zero point 0.4, and my whole body like toppled on itself. I developed POTS, like I think you said that you developed that, the dysautonomia, which comes with so many other things. I literally had to move from Florida because I could not be in the heat anymore. It was excruciating. Like I felt like I couldn't breathe in the heat. It would make my heart rate issues worse. Even cold too. Here where I'm at, it's cold now, so I have to have a heater on my feet at all times. I cannot regulate my body temperature. My sound intolerant or like what am I saying? Sound sensitivity is
Yeah.
so bad. Like I'll hear a muffler pass my house, like a car muffler, and I think it's gunshots. I don't know if I could say that on YouTube. I'm so
You're good.
sorry.
You're good.
Um, but and then I like at one point I was very agoraphobic. I was so scared to leave my house. I thought it was because of the symptoms I was having, but I think I was genuinely scared, like of being in public.
Yeah.
I would open my blinds and just kind of peek through my blinds, and like it's almost like I wanted to look at the outside world just to see what it looked like, but then I would close it because I'm like, that's too much for me. Like, and I am the most social person you will ever meet. Everyone always tells me, people I know in real life, they're like, you never met a stranger. Like, I was in my home, could not leave for, I don't even know. Like, I obviously left to go get groceries here and there, but that's probably the worst time period I've had so far is just that. And then just the paranoia. Like I would look at
Mhm.
people on my walk and I'm like, is this person going to attack me? Absolutely no reason to think that. It just, the way it completely takes over your entire brain is just, I can't believe people aren't being told about it.
I was just gonna say, I'm really so like I know everyone falls on a different spectrum. I don't care where anyone falls on the spectrum. No human, no human should endure what you're just sharing right now, because
And that's not even all of it. I have like 50 symptoms, but
oh
yeah.
no, I absolutely believe you. And all of these symptoms are super common. And it's like if you were to tell a doctor that, they would deny it. They would want to polydrug you. They would tell, convince you it's you, manipulate you, gaslight you. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just unremarkable. And it's like I'm so sorry that you had to go through this and still going through your own journey. I am really sorry about this.
Thank you. You too, because you've been through it too. I know. And yours is like 10 times worse than mine.
Like
So,
I said, I don't care where anyone falls on the spectrum. I don't care if someone,
yeah.
because let's just say someone gets debilitating anxiety, right? That's
Hmm.
not okay. That debilitating anxiety is crippling and is keeping people in their house. Like even if they just have that
Yes.
one symptom, they're still not leaving their house. They're not living a functional life because of the drugs.
Yes.
I don't care where anyone
And
sits.
yeah. And that can cause a ton of issues in itself. If you're not able to get up and go to like your
That's right.
workout class or even outside on a walk or socialize with other human beings, that's going
That's
to
right.
make their mental health so much worse, which just kind of fuels the fire of, oh, maybe you should just get back on your medication.
And it's so
Drives me nuts.
common. So,
It's so common.
you know, uh, obviously you're a nurse. So I'm curious of like you've been educated by the system. You see people on these drugs all the time. You hear doctors constantly probably in the room saying these drugs are safe. How does that make you feel like being trained by this system? And do you feel like you've been lied to? Like how do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. But I also think doctors are being lied to as well. So it's like it's so hard to blame them. But the ones I blame is when you have a patient explaining all this. I will not tolerate gaslighting.
That's
Like
right.
listen to your patient.
That's right.
Look outside the box. Always ask, are they on this medication? Could this be causing it? Like I feel like no one ever asks that for any medication, not even just psych meds. But as far as like I haven't worked bedside in almost 2 years now, so I don't think I could. Like I to be in the rooms and
Mm.
like seeing, so I didn't really see a lot of SSRIs being given in the hospital because I worked ICU. So I don't know if they just weren't taking them while they were in the hospital or what, but I saw Ativan being given a lot, but a lot of times that was because of alcohol withdrawal or something where they like, in that case, I do think the patient needed it because I don't know, they were in bad shape, like if they were in really bad shape. But I never saw like the day to day giving of like SSRIs or
Mm.
psych drugs. But we did give antipsychotics a lot to delirious patients. Or patients that had been in the hospital a long time. And then a lot of them kind of developed, it was almost like they did develop psychosis. But now I'm like, was it because of the meds we were giving? I don't know.
It's interesting. It's like what it's. I was specifically because you're working in that setting. I just assumed you must see antipsychotics because that seems to be like emergency rooms. That seems to be one of their to-go drugs. Not only though for like
Yes.
psychosis or any of that, but like nausea. Right? They're recycling antipsychotics and giving out. And I've seen people injured by taking one pill and injured with akathisia for years after.
Oh my gosh. And somebody said to me on one of their comments one day, they took, what's that med? It's for nausea, and they took it and it caused, I think, akathisia. And I was like, I had no idea because that wasn't even a psych med. So I had absolutely no idea. I knew that you couldn't just come off cold turkey though. And thank God I knew that. Otherwise, I probably would have tried. I feel like a lot of this is people just not being educated. Like, I feel like when you're prescribed one of these meds, they have to tell you you cannot just stop taking this.
That's right. That's right.
But so many people do, or they go way too fast and then they're just in for a whole basically misery most of the time. But then you see some people who do okay, and I will never understand that.
I know it's quite fascinating, and I was actually talking to my husband about this, the pharmacogenetic testing, because
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. I think it's important to know how you're going to metabolize the drug, but that's one part of the whole problem, right? That doesn't mean you're going to not have side effects. It doesn't look at your
Hmm.
quality of your organs and how you're going to actually like what age you are, right? Like if you look at antipsychotics, there's a 20 to 40% chance of getting tardive dyskinesia. But if you're like 60 above, there is a 60% chance of getting tardive dyskinesia. These pharmacodynamic tests are not going to be able to validate that. And so I think the big thing, I think that's a component to look at because obviously the way you metabolize a drug is really important because I think that can back up in your tissues and cause a lot of this neurotoxicity. I do think that's maybe that's part of a theory,
Yes.
but
And I'm just learning about those tests. I had no idea they were even a thing. And I'm like, the fact that that was now offered to me and my twin sister, by the way, who is going through all the same stuff I'm going through with Lexapro. So
oh, wow.
that, like, when people are like, how do you know it's Lexapro? I'm like, well, I have a little research study for you. My twin sister is going through the same thing after she came off Lexapro. So, I mean, if you want a twin study, you have one.
it's it's actually really funny too. So I'm also a twin, but with a boy, with a guy, and
Oh,
that's actually quite funny. And it's funny because he actually tested his serotonin neurotransmitters, which they can't obviously test the ones in the brain, but they test right in the rest of in your body. And his was like his serotonin was 42. I just did a test. I'm actually going to do a post on this about all my neurotransmitters. I mean, my doctor saw it. She's like, you should be dead. I did this 3 years into bind. My results for serotonin was like 375, for example. Like my twin
oh,
brother is 42. I'm off the spectrum. They actually had to build out the scale on my chart. If I show,
Oh my gosh.
I can't wait to do this post because it proves neuroadaptation. Like, here it is. Here are my excitatory neurotransmitters. They're all jacked. The calming neurotransmitters are downregulated. Here's all the evidence. Here it all is. But I'm just saying, I have a twin as well. It's like, yeah, my brother's 47, 42. I'm 375 on that
That
spectrum.
is so high. I don't even know the ranges because like that's not something we get in the hospital ever. But I want to see what mine is.
Oh, the test, I have the it's Vibrant Health, and it's the toxins and
Okay.
neurotransmitter test. I'll send it to you after. But
Yeah.
it was what
That is so
wild.
high.
It and forget the rest of the results. It was insane, but I'm just saying it's interesting because it's like, yeah, you have a twin that you could say, hey, that's what my twin's numbers looks like, or that's your comparison. And in your case, your twin is going through the exact same thing as you. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, have you developed like histamine problems?
Oh, girl, if I ate a tomato, I couldn't even open my eyes. And
Oh
like,
my
like
gosh.
my histamine, so it's actually really funny. So it's like a known thing that benzos and all psychiatric drugs could cause mast cell activation, right? And that's like
Yes.
becomes our sensitivity. I actually did a test. I actually have it here as well, food allergy test from Infinite. And it
Okay.
gave me this. I'm allergic to everything now, like unbelievably allergic. But once I removed all of those foods, I removed everything that had any type of sensitivity. I feel like for the first time, I'm actually seeing some type of healing. Like I saw some healing
That's
at the 2 year mark,
amazing.
and now again. And the 2 year mark was because I went carnivore, which we'll get into because I know you just went carnivore. For me, that was I
Yeah.
saw healing, and then now again, like removed all of these foods that I just could not have, and histamine histamine and glutamate is a big thing. So tell us about your, like, what are you experiencing when you have things that are high in histamine or any of that?
Yeah. So that's something that actually happened to my sister first. And then after this
Mm.
last, what, 8 months ago, that whole thing that happened to me, when I developed POTS is when the mast cell activation
Mm.
symptoms started to occur because they usually go hand in hand. And like so I'm doing carnivore now, just day 7. I'm just trying to see if it helps any of my symptoms. But I ate bacon last night, and which is high in histamine, but I just wanted to see like my whole face got so red. It was like, it felt like it was on fire. I had to ice my face for 2 hours for it to go away. It was burning. And then my tachycardia got worse and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe, like, I used to be someone who ate everything, and I was never somebody who had to restrict myself or anything. I ate anything and I always tolerated it fine. All of a sudden I can only tolerate like 3 foods because I
Wow.
just have all these reactions, and I can't believe that these meds can have the effect that they have on people. It's insane.
It's I don't think I would believe it if I didn't experience. Like I know what I experienced.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have ever believed that a drug that a doctor prescribed, this little white pill, could cause such havoc. Right. I could never
Me
imagine
too.
it. And that's why it's like I don't blame people for not believing it or understanding it, because it's like it's so the opposite of what the system is telling us. And I agree with you. Like I think that doctors don't know everything, but where the issue is the gaslighting, the manipulation, and it's a lot of doctors, they are so stuck in their bubble, and the the meta analysis and all of these journals that they're reading are all sponsored by big pharma. It's like you
I was
like
just gonna say that.
it's like, why don't, like, I had this conversation with another doctor recently because they just keep pushing drugs, and it's like, oh, there's no research that natural ways will heal this, right? Something else that I was going through, and I'm like, no, there's actual clinical research, just not the research you're reading. Like that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
agree with you that it's like I want to be so compassionate too to people that don't know, and it's because this is what they're being trained and their textbooks are infiltrated. But the lack of grace, the lack of willing to listen to us is where I cross
Yes.
where the line
And
shows.
the gaslighting, I cannot take it anymore. The gaslighting. Like,
No,
do people think we're just speaking about this for no reason? Like, do they think we're making it up?
that's right. That's right. we have nothing better to do than suffer in our home,
Right.
never leave the house, and just to like sit in a doctor's office and just complain about something we're not because we have nothing better to do, right? Like,
And I do think it's gonna become, I hate to say this, but I really think it's gonna be like an epidemic in a few years.
that's right.
Like people are gonna try, they're either not gonna be able to pick up their medication for some reason, or people are gonna try to come off because they hear things about them, and then they're gonna be like, wait, I can't. Like I can't. But then there's people that are like, well, I'm on it for life. It's fine. I'm on it for life. And I'm like, you do that, but it was ruining mine, so I'm not gonna do that.
And I think you make a good point, because I think so many people want us to like, oh, I'm just going to stay on life until it turns. And then you end up
Until it turns on
until
you.
it turns. Like there's no guarantee.
Yep.
I see so many people just like you that like we're on it and then it turns. Or I see that with finasteride. These poor, have you ever heard of post-finasteride syndrome? It's like the same thing, but with finasteride. And finasteride is like the hair that men are
Yeah.
using for hair growth. Also, I think don't hold me, but I also think it's a cancer treatment because it blocks certain hormones, hence the hair growth. But we're seeing this, and PFS is like PSSD. It's the same. It's sexual dysfunction and anhedonia, and they get withdrawal symptoms with it cases.
I experienced either of those things. I don't know what I would do. Like my situation is awful, but like thank God, I at least not yet. I have not experienced that yet.
Knock on wood. I think you're
Yeah.
doing a great job as being an example of someone that's taking the time needed to get off the drug safely, because I think it can take years. Like it really can take years, and you're 2 years in. I guess we could talk about that now. So do you know when you think you're going to come off, or how much longer, or where are you with that?
So I'm down to 3.6 milligrams, which is basically where I dropped 8 months ago, but then I ended up going back up to like 3.72 or something. And then that's where I stabilized. So I stayed there for like months. And then I kind of slowly came down to 3.6, like tiny decimals. But I'm just kind of like because I was kind of doing my own thing. I was coming down by like 0.01, just like the smallest, because I'm somebody who's so sensitive to any drop.
Yeah.
So, and I tried a tapering coach, it didn't really work out. I tried to get a compounded thing, and I had a reaction. Like I went into severe withdrawal because I was changing the manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
Which a lot of people don't realize that can happen, but it happened to me. So I was like, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to stick with the liquid I have. So I honestly, with how slow I'm going, I think it's going to be at least 2 more years, which is just insane to me that it's going to take 2 more years. But
But
I don't want to be protracted. So
let me tell you one thing. I mean, I had to jump off the benzo 50%, and then I tapered 7 months. Like it's very complex. Mine originally, my doctor forced me off, and that's where it started in the first place. So and then I went back on paradoxical reaction, blah, 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 and then was forced to jump 50% and then tapered. And I already had, I think it's called benzo withdrawal syndrome. So while you're tapering or you're still on the drug and you're protracted, I think that's what we refer to it as, benzo withdrawal syndrome. But I had no idea about what it would be like after I jumped. Going through this process so fast, I probably should have, things should have been done very differently. But
yeah,
was never equipped for what was about to come. Was never equipped. And so if it takes you 4 years and you're still able to live a life, and you're able to leave your house, and you're able to smile and be happy and have feelings, it is so worth it. Because it's like it could happen like that, or it could happen like this. Not everyone falls on the spectrum that I fall on. I know I'm pretty far on the spectrum. And I know many other folks, and benzos are quite unique because of how close they bind to the neurotransmitter. That's why so many more people are injured. Like it's like 1 in 6 on benzos, for example, and antidepressants, though I'm sure it's probably higher, but around 1 in 10 get protracted. And it's like, if I only knew what I knew now. So I think you're doing the right thing. You take your time. And I think you're a great example of that to show people.
Thank you.
Take
I tell, and I have people messaging me sometimes. They're like, I just want to be off. I'm like, this is not a race. It's not a race. You gotta go slow. It's worth it. It's so worth it. Because also have a lot of people that are like, I came off a month ago and I'm totally fine. And I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done to people about how this withdrawal can catch up with you. Like you could be living a totally fine life for 6 months and then all of a sudden it just hits you. And that's where it can get so dangerous because people are 6 months out and they're like, I'm having all these symptoms. It can't be the drug because that was 6 months ago. So then they get these false diagnoses from their doctor and then they get put on all these medications that just makes it so much worse.
It's
So
yeah, I'm
sad.
really happy you just said that because it happens so often. There was a woman that reached out to me, was on a benzo for maybe 2 decades, tapered for 2 years, jumped off, was fine for 6 months, disabled, was put in a wheelchair. And she had no idea, went to go do MRIs, and at the MRI, they gave her a Xanax to calm down.
Oh my gosh,
And
no.
she was able to somewhat walk after. And then she, it sounds like she was not aware of like, you will heal from protracted, it just takes time. She decided to go back on the drug. And so it's my heart goes out to everyone. This is where like, you want to cry because it's like how
Yes.
devastating it's just how devastating, and not to have the medical support, and often we don't have the family. So I think that brings me to my
Yes.
next question. Like, how has this impacted your relationship with family and friends?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This last time in July when this happened, I actually haven't spoken to my mom since July because um she just gaslit me about the whole thing. She was saying like maybe you just need the medication. And then she said, "Do you not believe in clinical depression?" And I was like, "Mom, I went on it for anxiety, so I don't know why you're talking about depression." Like people all like they hear antidepressant and they think that like
That's
you're
right.
automatically depressed. I was never a depressed person. But and everyone's like they save lives. Like I get they save lives, but that was not the reason why I went on it. So I don't know why you're even saying that. But anyway, so I have not talked to my mom since. I like if she would have reached out and said, "I want to know more about this. Like, can you educate me?" Or "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Can you tell me about?" Like, just try to understand. Even if you don't, there's no way you could understand. Just try. But she unfortunately didn't, and I hear this from so many people as well with their family members. So, and then I had a group of friends when I was living in Florida, and I tried explaining what was happening to me, and it's almost like they like all get quiet because they don't understand it, so they don't really want to like they don't know what to say almost.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I don't really speak to them either anymore. It's just I almost went into immediate protecting mode of myself, like survival mode. Because it's like I need to do what I need to do to survive right now. And if you're
That's
not
right.
going to be there for me, then I
That's
can't
right.
even like look in your direction, honestly.
No, you're and I'm so sorry you've had to go through that and cut out family. I'm sure you know
Thank
by
you.
now this is really common thread across our community that we
Yeah.
tend to have to cut out most people, right? To survive,
Hmm.
like you just said. It's part of survival. Like how else you can't deal with that extra stress and people denying what you're going through. It's all right. You can't even live in your own body, left alone having to deal with the outside
Exactly.
world inundating you and convincing you you're crazy. You know you're not crazy, but we're convinced often that we're crazy.
Yes. And then so that's why when I really started posting more and then I got the support from the whole community and like honestly, I have no idea how I would have gotten through that if it weren't for the community. And I thank everybody every day who I still talk to this day. I like met this girl on TikTok. We're tapering together. She's like my tapering buddy almost. And we talk every single day. Like, and I met her on TikTok. So I'm just so thankful for people who get it. And that's why I always say, like, the ones who get it, get it. The ones who don't, I hope you never have to get this.
Absolutely. And talking about community, I'm curious, have you ever felt like you belonged to a community before this? Or like is this your first time really feeling like you're part of a movement, a part of a community that's going through this together?
Honestly, yeah, like I felt a little bit kind of like I was when I was in nursing, just because like the people you worked with, like
Mhm.
everyone was in it together and Like if there was a horrible night, you had everybody together, but never like this. Never. So no, I don't think I have. And I'm so thankful for it. Almost like the PSSD, it's like chemical, I hate to say it, but like chemical castration.
Yeah.
Like how is that not enough to take these drugs off the market, or like not take them off the market, but do like more research into them?
I know
I
and well,
don't
this is
know.
the thing. It's like when you look at big pharma, they are doing dozens of trials, and they only need to submit two studies to the FDA. And these studies, right? If I'm participating in the study and die, or if I like participating and drop out, like the 50% of participants that actually do these studies, they drop out. They're not reporting this. They're coming up. They're choosing who they're going to do the final analysis on, and they're providing that to the FDA. And it's like, we're not seeing the raw data. This is the problem. We're not seeing the raw data, and the FDA is definitely not seeing the raw data. And they're approving it
No.
off of, and there's so much conflict of interest. I don't want to go into this topic too much because I could talk about this all day, but you know what I'm saying?
It's so, yes, I know what you're saying. Yes. And it's, I think, I don't know. I hope that with all of us speaking out, and I feel like there's a little bit more attention on it lately, like in the last couple months even. And it makes me really, I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but it's definitely, it just makes me like breathe a breath of fresh air because I'm
Mhm.
like, finally, like there's some at least talk about it. Like anytime I see a news article, I'm
That's right.
like, wait, did they really say that? Like, and there will always be people that come after our community
Yep,
and think we're lying and all this stuff, but we all know what happened to us. And I always say, don't ever stop sharing your story. And
that's
because I
right.
know I'm never going to, and you're never going to. So,
That's right. That's right. It's funny you say that. My brother, he works with a psychologist, and I guess my brother was going through periods of difficult time, and every time it's quite interesting. I think with a therapist, when they start to feel that they have nothing to offer, like it's almost like they became redundant. The natural thing for them to do is, well, there's always antidepressants. There's always, have you
yes,
thought about that? And it actually is a reflection of them, because especially like in my brother's situation, it's like situational. What is the
yes.
thinking of pushing a drug for situational anxiety or stress?
Yes, I had a friend not too long ago. She's going through like a really tough divorce. And she's like texting me. She asked, she's like, "Can you tell me more about SSRIs?" I think I was like, and she had just started therapy. Like literally, this was like her second therapy session going through this divorce. And she's like, I was offered, my therapist wants to refer me to a psychiatrist for medication. I'm like, you are going through a divorce.
Oh,
This is like situational like situation, and you're gonna just throw a drug on her. And I told her, I'm like, I would never tell somebody that I love to go on one of these medications. So I said I would say no, but do like whatever obviously you want to do. And I don't know if she ended up going on it or not, because that
oh.
was the one that we don't really talk too much anymore. But yeah,
it Psychologists are a part of this problem. It was a
yes,
psychologist that pushed me onto a benzo from the first session. I was pushed on by a psychologist to go onto a benzo, but they are a part of the problem. And the interesting in that scenario with my brother, he turned around and he was like, absolutely not. Like these drugs are dangerous, because he's obviously he knows
good
my
for him.
situation.
Yeah.
She left that day, and she came back to the next meeting with him and said, oh my God, I looked this up, and this is a real thing. Like, I had no idea. It sounds like this is coming to light now. So I just want to share that with you because you just mentioned.
Wow. I
Yeah.
honestly, one psychologist or one psychiatrist who gets a hold of this information is better than none of them getting a hold of it. So that just makes me happy to hear that. And I'm glad he told her that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. It was quite interesting. Um, okay, so just a few questions before we finish up. What are your suggestions, like from your personal experience, or even as a nurse? What are your suggestions of how to cope through withdrawal?
I
Or
guess
what
the number
helps you?
one thing would be community. Find a community, and this community preferably just know your sources. Like in my I have like this bio thing and you click it and there's all these like articles. So like if people want to come, like your family is like, I don't believe you, send them the articles, send them the documentaries, send them surviving antidepressants.org or like any of the Ashton manual or whatever the situation is. Like I feel like it's important to just have these resources not only for you to understand what's going on, but for everyone around you. But not everyone around you is going to want to even know. But in case they do ask or like fight what you're going through, I think it's nice to have that because it makes you feel like you're not A, in it alone, and B, crazy, because so many people have commented on my post and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm crying reading this right now. I thought I was going crazy. Like that has literally been comments that I've gotten. And you're not crazy. You know, like I said in the beginning, you know your body better than anyone else. If something's happening, like there's a reason why it's happening, and just always getting to the root cause. The other thing, I mean, like physically, I guess almost keeping like a journal or something. Like I keep one like in my mind, but then also in my notes app, I'll write things like I dropped this small amount this day, and then I'll put like the next few days, like the symptoms that I experienced, just to like kind of gauge, am I going too fast? Is this too big of a drop for me? Just to kind of keep, I don't know, keep yourself in check and just follow along what's going on. Because so many people, they experience symptoms the next few days, but then they'll experience it like 2 weeks later. So I think it's important to just keep track. And then also I've done things that won't help a lot. Like some people can't even handle acupuncture, but acupuncture has helped me, at least for my nervous system. And then also people who are on meds and just have really bad anxiety, they ask like, what can I do? I would say check your diet, check your blood work, see what you're deficient in. Start acupuncture, like, because the purpose of acupuncture normally is to like re-regulate your nervous system. And if you're somebody who's having a lot of anxiety, at least try it. And you can't just do it once, you have to do it a few times. Therapy, like EMD, or what is it called? EMDR, is that it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah,
go.
you're good.
Things like that. There's so many tools you can try, neurofeedback before going on pills. And I think people are just doing that because there's like all these influencers now, like pushing these meds, and they think it's like, oh, I'll just take it. It's the magic pill for me. I thought I was superwoman when I first started taking it because I felt so much better anxiety wise, but I had no idea what was in for me. So just know everything before you even try. That wasn't even the question, but I felt like I had to add it in there.
No, that was awesome. And thank you because I think throwing these suggestions out could just be so helpful. And you never know, like someone could listen and be like, let me go down that first. So that's awesome. I guess my final question before you could share with us, where everyone can find you, but could you share one or two things that are positive things that came out of this journey for you?
Oh, yes. One, finding myself again, finding my brain again is honestly, like, I was like almost in tears earlier talking about it. I just like, I'll be going on my off day. It's a sunny day today. After this, I'm going to go for a walk. And that like walk in the sun is enough to like satisfy my happiness for like the next 2 days. Like, and before I even like, first of all, I probably wouldn't even go on a walk because I was always just like, I don't know. I didn't find joy in the small things ever. So I think that's been amazing. And then two, well, this is like two and three, but the community I've met and just seeing people who are telling their stories and like being brave, like the bravery and the courage that I've seen is amazing. And the people that are trying to, like Dr. Mark Horowitz and Angie, they're like really trying, people are making clinics, and just seeing how much it's like, it's been an issue for so long, like what, over 20 years now, but we're just now starting to get like these taper clinics, and it's just amazing to see the growth that is coming in this. Like it's almost like it's about to be a movement if it isn't already. And then also I want to say just something kind of fun. With sobriety, I was never into drugs or anything like that, like street drugs, but I drank a good amount. I was like going out with my friends drinking. Throughout this journey, because of my symptoms, I ended up just giving it up over a year ago, and that was just another like I don't know, angels sending me gifts, because it was just, I don't know. I just feel like I'm overall such a better person than I was before in so many ways. And it's all because I started taper. Even though withdrawal has been so bad, I feel like there's been a lot of positives for me as well. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure there are going to be more gifts that come out of this as you move along in your
I
journey.
hope so. I hope so.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. So where could, if any of the listeners wanted to find you, where can they find you?
Right now, I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I'm thinking about making an YouTube or something. I don't know. I feel like I need something else. It's at that functional nurse. I wanted it to be the functional nurse, but that was taken. So it's that functional nurse. The name came because I was trying to go to functional medicine to heal. I actually, one thing during withdrawal, I developed a rash that was literally all over my face. Like it destroyed my skin barrier. It started as little dots on my eyes, but then it ended up all over my face. So I ended up seeing functional medicine doctors, and I can't really see them now because I can't tolerate supplements like I could before. But it really did help me kind of see like, oh, my gut is so messed up. Like taking this might help, removing this out of my diet might help. So that's where my name came from. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I agree. I think those tests that I mentioned earlier, the neurotransmitter test and that the sensitivity test, I went through functional doctors as well for that. So just throwing that out there in case
Yes.
you want to do that.
Okay, in case I want to see that later on for myself.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's definitely quite interesting. But Amanda, thank you so much for like coming on today and just like telling your story and being so vulnerable. I think it's stories like this that like really kind of change the trajectory for people that are they want to go on or figuring out how to come off or just understanding what's happening to them and they're going through something really similar. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was a wonderful conversation, and I hope we can talk again soon.